So, how's it going, everyone? You're very welcome to this Club Leadership Series webinar with the LGFA this evening. My name is Niall Mulrain. I'm Head of Volunteer Development with the LGFA, and I'm delighted to be joined by Vivian Nee this evening. Vivian, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. Yeah, like Niall said, Vivian here, and my role is National Development Officer, and then comes under volunteer remit. So like that, delighted to be here.
Very good, thank you, Vivian. I suppose tonight we're going to talk about operating effectively as a club and what that is, and maybe how some tips on how you could put things in place to make sure your club's operating as effectively as it could be. So I suppose just to begin, guys, our clubs, and we're very, very lucky within ladies football that we have over 1,000 clubs in Ireland, and we have more overseas, we have more all over the world, but we've grown membership numbers. Our clubs are growing all the time, and we're reaching women and girls from all over the country and overseas as well. The club as its basis form is the primary unit of the association. So it plays a really, really important role, providing, that kind of social outlet and a healthy activity for thousands of people around the world. Okay. And that's playing, coaching, administrating, officials, all those kinds of things, providing output for everyone there. Starting with club football, for primary school age girls, and an individual can keep playing ladies football for as long as she wants. Especially now we have the Sports Direct, Gaelic for Mothers and Others initiative for adults interested in recreational or non-competitive participation as well. So you can see all the different pathways, all the different avenues that people have to get involved in our sport. I suppose the club is the bedrock of every Irish community, and provides an organised structure from which big community spirit is generated. Today nearly every town and village has its own club centered on playing our games. And with that, your club has a tremendous influence in the local community. Okay, the LGFA is a strong and vibrant association, and thanks to an army of dedicated volunteers like yourselves who are on the call tonight, committed to growing and promoting and developing the games in your club, and in ladies football as a whole. So it's vital that as clubs we continue to grow and operate effectively to make sure this keeps happening. Okay, so that's the background of what we're looking at tonight. We know this already. Our clubs are the vital cog in everything we do as an association. So the club is the bedrock. It's the number one. It's the core of everyone's involvement in the association. So everyone's a member of a club. Everyone starts with their club, and you finish with your club, as they say. Whether that be from our Go Games initiative to our Gaelic for Mothers and Others, from start to finish, you're involved in your club. Okay, and as I say, if you're an official, administrator, a club officer, a volunteer within the club, your club's so important to you as well. So we want the club to run well. We want the club to develop and grow and keep prospering. Okay, so I suppose because our clubs are always growing and expanding, we can sometimes lose focus, our direction, and maybe even sight of what we're here for in the first place. And it's important to remember why we're here, and it's the mantra of ladies football. We're here to be the sport for females, the game for fun, and the place for community. And through no fault of our own, and through nobody's fault, sometimes we can lose sight of that, and we can lose focus on that, and we can focus on maybe things that maybe aren't growing our club, and things that maybe aren't helping us develop. So I suppose we're going to look at tonight is to understand that there's no secret formula. There's no secret pathway, and there's no things you must do or things you have to do to make sure you achieve success in your club. Okay, it will be different for everyone, and we're really aware that there's some of our urban clubs that have thousands of members, and some of our rural ones that mightn't have 50. So there's no secret formula. There's no one size fits all for how your club operates effectively. But what we're going to look at tonight maybe is a number of different things that are common to your club, no matter the size, location, the success of your club, the history of your club. These are things that you can do to ensure that your club is effective in whatever they choose to do. So the first thing we'd ask you to do is to set expectations, and you can see there on the screen there, in any competition we play or we find ourselves involved in, there can only be one winner. And that's when we go out with each of our teams at the start of the year. There's only one person will win a championship. There's only one team will win a league. in whatever league you're competing in. It'd be great if it's you, but sometimes it's not, and we have to figure out if we're defining success by the number of trophies you can collect in a year, or if we're defining success as a club in other ways. And if you're defining success by the number of cups you're lifting, you're going to set yourself up for failure at some stage, So I suppose in the chat, straight away, I want you to get involved here, guys. I'd like you to type in for me. What kind of club would you like to be known as? Okay. Is it one that retains all its players and keeps people involved? Is it one that is a community hub? Or is it one that even puts your membership at the front of everything you do? Or is it about collecting cups? You can be honest as well. So type into the chat there, which would you like to be as a club, or what would you like to be known as for a club? And that's really your starting point, because when you set your expectations, then you can drive on from there. So type into the chat, Vivian will keep an eye on it there. What kind of things would you like to be known as, or what is your expectations from your involvement in your club? Maybe is a better way of putting it.
Very good, Carol. Yeah, retaining players, particularly teenage girls, huge. Same thing with Robert there. Yeah, and up in the membership, that's a good one as well. I suppose that ties in with the retaining teenage girls too. It's keeping them.
That's good. Growing our game, growing our membership, retaining our players, particularly the female players. Carol there, definitely. Yeah.
Being part of the community as well. Yeah, so that's what we say, isn't it? Gaelic Games is for everyone. LGFA, you're inclusive, big part of the community.
Yeah, definitely. And I might let everyone else keep typing into the chat, and we might just move forward with the next slide as well. And I suppose the big thing about setting expectation, guys, is once you figure out what kind of club you'd like to be, you can set your expectations accordingly and manage the expectations of your members, which is maybe more important there as well. So when you've set your expectations and goals for the year ahead, and maybe even for longer term, you can start to put plans in place to meet those expectations. So isn't a goal's a dream when you write it down? That kind of idea that once we know where we're going to, we can start to put plans in place, and we can start to put actions in place to actually get there. So from what we're seeing in the chat, being part of the community, so that's our expectation as a club. So then you can actually start writing down, start getting together, start putting your heads together and say, right, well, how do we be a part of the community? How do we be the major part of the community? How do we be the center of the community? How do we actually retain our players? What's our plan for growing our membership? So that's why I suppose setting expectations and then managing expectations of your members is so important. Our next, I suppose, tip for you guys is the first place everyone should start is by creating clear lines of communications. And that might sound like an obvious place to start, or an obvious thing to do, but having clear channels and lines of communication between members in the club sometimes overlooked. Okay. We can talk about the dreaded WhatsApp group, and messages go in, but I don't know how much information goes in, and I don't know how much information is taken out of it, is my own personal opinion on that. But that's probably our setup in most clubs. Should we have a group, and we have a group chat, and sure, who's needed to do the gate is typed in it, or if somebody needs to do parking at mass or something like that there, that's written in it as well. But is that the most effective way we can communicate as clubs? With the technology we have in our hands now, we have Fern, first of all, the Gaelic Games is new communications tool. So we've got our team sheets on there, we've got our membership on there. Hopefully in the future we'll have more different additions to Fern as well, and we'll be able to use it to help communication in the club too. But there's one way we're tidying the thing up. We've got our group chats and our different communication tools that we use. We've got phones, we've got text messages, we've got emails, and the first port of call, I suppose, for any club is to ensure that our secretary is using their official LGFA email address, because there's so much information, and myself and Vivian run a number of initiatives in terms of volunteer development, and it all goes out to club secretaries. That's where all the information from the association goes to, and it streams through and it flows through the club secretary. And if the lines of communication then down to coaches, down to coaching officers, down to maybe your PRO, down to someone who's involved in improving or promoting youth participation in your club, if it doesn't get there, then there's something broken, So with that, it's and cleaning that up and making sure that you have that line of communication is a really, really easy way, and it's a real quick win to improving how effective your club is. Most of the time your communication, your clear line of communication is as simple as defining not only what's communicated and what's been passed on, but how's it happening. Is email the most effective way to communicate? Is it the fact that maybe the club secretary is getting all these emails from national, from the provincial councils, from your county boards, and they're passing it on to a coach or a coaching officer's or a club member's email address, but it's never been read there. So if it's not been passed on there, is that the most effective way to communicate? With your subcommittees, is there ways that they communicate with each other? Is the information that's coming at committee meetings been passed on to the people it needs to be passed on to? Okay, is there actions and I suppose actions and assignments to people from our committee meetings, and how is that communicated to people? Is there meetings that people need to attend or people should be at, and how is that communicated to them? Is there any kind of a newsletter goes out from the club? And I often say this, that my own club, our club colours are black and amber. So amber's sort of yellow, as they would say in Throne. So we've a newsletter called the Yellow Pages, and that goes out on a monthly basis, and it's in the shop, and it's in the pub, and it's in the chapel, and everyone knows it's there, and everyone looks for it now, and it's a way of keeping in touch with everything that's going on. So is there even lists of members that need to be created about people that need to know, if it's your coaching group for the year, you're under 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 minor, senior coaches, do they need to be on some kind of a list that information needs to get to them? Do your committee members need to be on some kind of a list that information gets to them? So there's really, really simple ways of improving your lines of communication, but I suppose some questions for you as well. And again, you can type this into the chat, your answers. You don't have to, you can think about them yourselves and maybe reflect on them after we finish. But how do you as a club currently communicate with your members? So how do you do that at the moment? What technology do you currently use to get your message out there? Okay, do you use group chats? Do you use social media? What social media do you use? Do you use emails to communicate between yourselves as a club? What role does your PRO play in all of this? And maybe above all else, there you can see at the bottom, guys. What is the communication chain of command in your club? So how does it work? When the information, we know how the information comes into every club because it comes in through the secretary. So where does it go after that? And maybe you need to look at that and draw those lines. And I'm sure we have some secretaries on the night, and maybe you have your lines of communication drawn already. But once it comes in, how does it get back out to the people that it needs to get to? Even you take your members, your ordinary members, and your parents, which is a massive cohort in any club now as well. How does information get out to them? How do you keep them in the loop of what's going on? How do you keep your supporters in the loop of what's going on? So some things to think of. Again, you can type it into the chat there. You can answer those questions now. You can reflect on them after. And it's great, Robert, to see there. Vivian said, group chats, Facebook, Instagram, emails, and monthly newsletters. That's great to see that you are doing that as a club as well. I suppose number 3, guys, is looking for some transparency in what you do. And that's, I suppose that's it's one of the things that would come under the heading of governance, and it's about transparency. And I've said this before, there's in every club, there's probably a group of people who are working themselves to the bone, ensuring that the club's improving, ensuring that the club's still going, and maybe treading water at times and staying alive at times. And there's probably another group of people outside the club sitting going, well, that share's doing everything and they won't let me in, and they won't let me be involved, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and nobody knows what they're at. And and without the transparency of what you're doing as a club, people can have those discussions and they can say, sure, they're doing this and they're doing that, and nobody really knows what they're doing. So as a club and as officers in the club, to be transparent in all your actions, especially when it comes to our AGMs, especially when it comes to votes, especially when it comes to things that might be, contentious issues, being transparent about how we go about these things and what the processes are, and how things come about, is a way to make sure everyone is involved and everyone feels part of the club, and everyone feels satisfied is probably not the right word, but everyone feels, clear on where they're at in terms of how the club operates, and even with our members, that everyone is clear, defined roles and responsibilities. Being transparent with the roles your officers are responsible for, along with what your members are responsible for, will allow everyone to be involved on the same page, be on the same page at all times, and in another way, it's vital to create a sort of a culture of transparency around procedures and process, and as mentioned earlier, expectations, so that if there is any kind of disconnect, if there's any kind of fallout, for want of a better word, it's clear where it happened, and it can be easily fixed whenever you're being more transparent in all your dealings, so I suppose, again, a question for you is, and maybe reflect on for a minute. You can type into the chat. Again, you don't have to. You can reflect on this in your own time, but how transparently do you currently operate as a club? Okay, so are there any dealings that maybe you're still a bit opaque about, or you're maybe not as open as maybe you could be around how that operates? And is there anything you could do as a club to be more open and transparent to current and even prospective new members? Are you a closed shop? And are all your officer roles tied up for the next 5 years? I don't think there are in any club, but is it a case that a new member would look at your club and say, well, sure, I'm not getting involved in that because I don't know how they operate? So is there anything you could be more open about? Is there anything you could improve in your procedure that could be more transparent? And I see Bridget just come into the chat there, Vivian, as well, saying you feel that sometimes the group chats are ignored, and I'd be of a similar opinion. What do you think, Vivian?
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes, or it's even like, in the Wild West, you put in something and then it's kind of like the tumbleweed. No one's
That's right.
answering you.
That's right. That's right. There you are. I suppose number 4, guys. And our next point is when we're making decisions about what we're doing as a club, they should be informed decisions. Okay, they shouldn't be hunches. They shouldn't be gut feelings, as they talk about. We've great mechanisms for discussion and debate and decision making in our clubs, and that's the club committee meeting. Um, Club committee meetings and our AGMs. They're the place, where people can come and share their views and share their opinions and have the debates and have the rows and come to a decision and go out again as one club. That's in theory, that's what our club committee meetings and our annual general meetings are for. So it's important that when it arises that decisions are to be made, that everyone's aware of all the facts and all the sides to any kind of discussion or argument or debate, instead of trusting our gut, you know. But and I suppose by ensuring that subject matter experts are involved, a more effective decision can be made. And what I mean by a subject matter expert there is that it's not if you're making a decision regarding coaching, that it's not your treasurer making the decision based on maybe a financial need. That if it's a decision regarding coaching, that your coaches are involved in that decision. On the same thing, that if it's a decision around finances, that your treasurer and your finance committee are involved in that decision, rather than saying, that's the senior manager making that decision. So that everyone has all the facts, everyone has all sides, and they hear all sides, and that you're objective when you come to decisions. I know the one at the moment is, I suppose, the big issue at the moment is around Go Games and the new Go Game policy. And again, the Go Games policy is the product and the end product of subject matter experts getting involved in looking at what is the best way and what's the best for our players. And I know I'm sure in a lot of clubs, a lot of people's gut instinct would be, well, I'm against this, because that's the mood from a lot of places. But again, do we have the facts at hand? Do we know all sides of the story? I'll let you decide for that one yourself tonight. But there's an example of that. When we're making decisions, we have to have the facts and we have to have I suppose, all sides, and we have to know, I suppose, the consequences or the results of every decision we're gonna take as well. So think about how are decisions made in your club. So if we're coming to a decision, is it a show of hands usually within your club? If it's a a, a, a vote, how is that vote done? Is it by secret ballot? Is there any other ways that you vote within your club? Is there any procedures that have to take place? How can you improve this over the coming months? So this year is the start of a new year. How could you improve that process in your club as well? So just take a minute and think about that one too. You know, our next thing we're going to look at is the three P's, and that's people, people, and people. And the single greatest resource at our disposal within our association are the people who volunteer to be involved in sport, and that's club officers, that's match officials, that's coaches, that's the people that cut the grass and do the scoreboard and wash the jerseys and make the tea. That they're the biggest single asset that we have as an association and within wider Gaelic games. So it's so important for clubs to invest wisely in our coaches, in our match officials, in our administrators. And as well, it's vital that we ensure that there's a proper pathway for those people to follow. That there's a proper place for those people to go when we have selected them. Um, I was speaking to someone a couple of weeks ago about getting someone involved, and I thought it was a funny thing to say. They said, "Well, we could get somebody involved, but we want it to be the right person. We want to wait and get the right person." And that's really true. We want the best people to be involved in whatever we're doing as clubs. So it's important that they have, I suppose, that they're clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and they know exactly what they should be doing, but also that they have some kind of a pathway to follow, whether that's following on from the person who came behind them, or they have a plan for where they want to be or where they want to go to within your club. And sometimes we can find that higher turnover of volunteers can be a symptom of something deeper going on in the club. And clubs really should be focused on creating opportunities for volunteers and investing and training them properly. And I know we'll not get into it in any kind of deep way tonight because we do have a volunteer recruitment and retention webinar, and that can be found on our YouTube channel. But the big thing with volunteers is it's not getting people to do something for you. It's getting them to want to do something for you is the big thing within our clubs. It's giving them a reason to get involved. When they do get involved, making sure they have successful a good time is the best way to put it. They don't have a bad time when they're volunteering, that they don't really hate it, and dislike what they're doing, because maybe they haven't been given the right support. So ensuring that they've got the right support to have a successful experience, and then ensuring that they're supported throughout their volunteering experience as well. So volunteers are always looking for that really good, experience that I'm doing good and it's making me feel good as well, and what they think are the best opportunities out there for them. So as a club, we have a part to play in that as well, to make sure that our volunteers feel that they're wanted, feel that they're contributing to the end goal is to make your club the best it can be, and that they're valued is a good way of putting it. I suppose, thinking about your own club, what is your club doing now to attract the right people? Okay. So, and I don't mean anyone who puts their hand up isn't the right person, but how do we get the best people involved? The people, and everyone that does get involved should be valued in their own right. But if we have a specific role to fill, how do we get the person that has the skills to fill that role rather than just anyone who's willing to do it? Is the best way of putting that, So think about that one. Are you investing in retaining the volunteers you currently have, and how are you doing that? So do you do anything to keep them, or is there just an expectation within our clubs that well, there's Mary, she's helped out for the last 5 years, she'll be back again next year. So how do we do that? Are we investing in retaining our volunteers, and is there any kind of a pathway in your club for volunteers to progress? So as I said, Mary, who's taking the under eights, does she see a pathway to get to coach the seniors someday, to coach the minors, to coach the under 16s? Does she see a pathway for herself to progress within your club? Does John, who's taken on the vice treasurer role, and maybe wants to be the chairperson someday. Does he see a pathway for him to get there? And does he see, I suppose, opportunities for him to get there? So as clubs, can we do more on that front as well? So again, you can type into the chat if you have an answer for that or you have thoughts on it. But again, just reflect on that again and think about, how could you improve that in your club as well? Number 6, quality coaching and support. So without quality coaching, our players will have a really difficult time improving and developing their skills in the game. And the real issue there is that there's 2 different parts to quality coaching in your club. There's obviously getting good coaches involved, okay, and getting people who are willing to help out, ensuring that they're trained, ensuring they know what they're doing, and ensuring, I suppose, they have the skills to be able to help your players. But behind the scenes, there has to be a coach support system within your club, and because, we are football clubs, so what we do is play football, and that is it's the most important thing that we do, is play the sport, So we have our coaches, but do we have a kind of support system in the club after that? So that could be how we recruit and retain our coaches within our club. Is there a coaching leadership group within the club? Is there someone who takes charge or looks after or oversees how our coaches are getting on in the club? Is there opportunities for personal development for our coaches within our club? Is there coach education opportunities for our coaches within our club? And what kind of administrative supports are there for our coaches at the club level, and at team levels? So is the coach at a team level, say, is our under 12 coach, tying shoelaces and setting out cones and organising drills and taking attendance and making sure if someone needs to get to the toilet to get that as well? Or do we have supports around them so our coaches can focus on being the best coaches for our clubs, and we have those supports, so all the other things around the coaching and training sessions can happen as well, So think again, what is your club currently doing to promote coach education in your club? What kind of support does your club offer your coaches? Sorry, that should say. And have you thought about, do you have a coaching philosophy in your club? So we're back to our expectations at the start. Have you actually set out, well, what kind of coaches do we want in our club? How would we like them to coach, and what's the end goal for our coaches and our players within our club? And that top question there, guys, if you have a real think about that one. Coach education, I was on a call earlier about club coaching officers, and they talked about nearly like a universe of coach education opportunities. We have formal learning, we have informal learning, and we have all the other types of learning that happens through active coaching as well. So sort of formal learning, but our formal learning opportunities, so our introduction to Gaelic games, our level 1, our level 2 coaching courses are so important. They're not only, from a legal point of view, vital for our coaches to have at least that introduction to Gaelic games coaching certificate, but in terms of development, in terms of getting the best people, we should be striving to get our coaches as many opportunities as possible to undertake coach education. And then we've got the whole lot of things like sort of core modules that are coming across Gaelic games. We've got, coach the coach workshops. We've got all the different coaching workshops that happen every winter, around maybe kicking or around coaching the goalkeeper, things like that there. And then, as I say, we've got the non-formal stuff like learning from each other in our club, having like coach observation sessions maybe within our club, having someone again who will be a support to coaches in our club, and above all else, ensuring that coaches get an opportunity to actively coach within our clubs as well. And you as coaching our club officers and administrators have a really vital role to play in that as well, and making sure that those opportunities are there for them. So again, have a wee think about what are the supports there for your coaches in your club, I mentioned it earlier, but we've got the governance and leadership aspect to ensuring we're effective run clubs as well. So in essence, ladies football and Gaelic games as a whole are as a volunteer-led association. And that means that the leadership of clubs is made up of people who really, really care about whether your club succeed or not. And usually whether the club down the road doesn't succeed at all, and that's just the short and long of it. We're here because we care about about our clubs, and we're here. We can involve our counties because we're involved. We really, really care what happens in our county. We really, really care what happens in our club, you know. So to ensure that these people are successful in their role, it's important to define, you know, what is the role and responsibility of anyone who takes up a position in running your club. Um, I mentioned it earlier, it's one thing our volunteers look for, is knowing what their duties are, knowing how much time is and how much commitment is expected of them. But also from a club point of view, it's really, really important that we do define, you know, well, what does the chairperson do? What does the secretary do? What does the treasurer do? What does the coaching officer do? You know, and what is their role? And if someone does want to help out, well, what role are they actually going to undertake here? And then the other side of that is it's so, so important to engage a real broad spectrum and a wide range of people. Um, to you know, to be club members, to be sponsors, to getting grants, and maybe even implementing fundraising programs, because the people that are really, really good coaches mightn't be good at any of this. So you have to think about the bigger picture as well, and the wider scale. How can we attract as many people as possible, you know, and as many diverse people as possible to be involved in our club, you know. So that's the other side of that, you know, without adequate funding, you know, in the terms of grants, fundraising, sponsors, things like that, their operations of your club are compromised as well. So it's important to remember, as I say, what kind of club are we? We're a football club, but we're also given opportunities for people to use their skills to help us as well. So that could be in finance, in fundraising, in promoting our games, things like that there, you know. So think about your club again. Do all your volunteers understand their role and responsibility? So they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing? Is it written down anywhere? Is it just they asked the person who came before them, and maybe before that they asked somebody else, and maybe the person before that went to some kind of training to figure out what they were supposed to be doing? Or is it written down somewhere, you know? And then think of again about how do you engage with the wider community? How do you attract new members, and how do you appeal to that sort of broad spectrum of people in your area to get involved in your club? I don't know, Vivian, would you like to come in there, or do you have any thoughts even on what we're talking about at the minute?
Yeah, but I suppose it is hugely important, and like you said there. So, say now I've just come in as secretary there. Yeah, we held the AGM before December, and then I go, okay, well, I'm not really sure, don't really know what my second. And I asked the one before me. Well, that's all good and well, but I suppose, um, like you were saying there, now that we have support that there. If you look up on the LGFA website, there's club officer guidelines and all that.
Mhm.
That while the person that came ahead of you may have all the experience and stuff, but were they also doing the role as per the guidelines, I guess? Isn't
Yeah.
that kind of what we're trying to hit home? Yeah.
Yeah, big time, and it's like, yes, we might be doing what in our club we think is maybe the right thing to do, but are the people in the roles in our clubs actually doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is a better way of thinking about it, maybe, you know. So as a club again, and not just as members of our club, as a club, these are things we do have to think about, you know. The next thing I suppose we have to look at, you know, is how we actually operate and administrate our clubs, you know. So some people can think of, you know, the day-to-day operations of a club as maybe mundane, and casual members might think of that, you know, but without you know, someone making sure our players are registered, you know, people collecting our fees from membership, you know, making sure that fields are booked and pitches are booked, that our registration for leagues have been done, that our kit and our equipment procurement has happened, and we have enough balls, and we have enough cones, and we have jerseys. No club can field a team in a competition, you know. So your club administration activities should support players and coaches in a way that aligns with and implements, to say, that club mission, and your sort of strategic plan, and where you want to be and how you want to get there. So I suppose you know, the operations and administrative activities of a club are often overlooked because people think they're too busy to build or maintain efficient processes, you know, and that can sort of be complicated again by you know, high turnover of volunteers, and people being burnt out, maybe with being involved for a long time. um Concentration of institutional knowledge, you know, so that means, you know, you have maybe 3 or 4 people in your club who know exactly where everything's kept and how everything's done, and this is the way we do it, and only I know how to open up the club rooms, and only I've got the key to the gate, and things like that there, you know. So there are only a few people who may leave at some point. You know, if their child leaves the club, if they do get burnt out with it all, they might go and suddenly you have a massive drain in the knowledge within the club. There could be a lack of understanding from some people on the number and the complexity of all the jobs needed to run a club. So they might just think it's really, really easy looking in from the outside. But when they're in that position, they might understand how difficult it is at times to keep our clubs going. And maybe sometimes there can be an assumption that someone will pick up the slack when their own skills, knowledge, or interests lie elsewhere in your club, you know. So that's things that can hinder, I suppose, how we operate and how we do administrate our clubs. And it's really, really important that as clubs, we do write down what our procedures are. We write down how we do things. We write down what are the processes within our club. If there's something that has been agreed about how something's done, maybe that's like a tendering process, or maybe something to do with how we manage our finances within the club, that when the person in that role maybe leaves at the end of the year, that knowledge isn't lost, that still is a process and it keeps carrying through, and there's a bit of continuity between maybe committees, between coaches, between turnover within clubs, you know. I suppose I say it's a big cohort within our club now, you know, as the parents, you know, and what about parents? You know, they're your biggest captive audience. Okay. So your current underage and adult players, you know, their parents, their guardians, they're there, they're bringing them to training, they're dropping them off, they're coming to games. So they play a role in all aspects of any club operation, whether they're active members or not. You know, they could be coaches, they could be members of the executive, they could be in a support role at team level, but they could be just coming in and dropping off and going away and coming back when training's over. You know, but they're still involved in your club. So the success of your club does rest on how well the people in these roles, and that includes the people who have no role at all, how they interact and how they work together to make sure that the players are at the centre of what we do. So again, you might have parents who are really, really invested and really, really interested and take a massive active role in your club. You might have some that go, right, well, just look, this is a pastime, and I'm dropping off, and I'm heading away, and I'll come back when it's over. And it's how you engage them, how you integrate them, how you get them involved is a real big indicator of how effective you are as a club as well. You know, so think about how your club is currently engaging with the parents or families, your current underage and adult players. How could you improve that link? So we talk about school club links. Well, have we got a school parent link in our club, or sorry, a club parent link in our club as well? And are you stressing the value of being involved in your club rather than the cost? Because it is, you know, it's the big elephant in the room, is the number one thing that people like to gripe about, maybe, is the cost of membership and the cost of being involved. But the same players who are possibly involved in playing our games might go to swimming lessons, and it could be a fiver a go. Might go to dancing lessons, and it could be a tenner a go. You know, and so when we think of how many training sessions, how many games, how many opportunities to be involved in our games we provide every year, the serious value in what we're providing to children, to youth, to adult players, and to their families as well by being involved in our club. So are we stressing that to our parents, and we stressing the value of being a member of this association and being a member of this club and being part of, you know, wider Gaelic games and part of the LGFA, rather than saying, look, you know, this is the cost at the start of the year. So how do we go about engaging our parents, you know? Um, and I suppose one of our last points tonight is, you know, when we think of our clubs, they're all part of one big jigsaw, and the LGFA is one big puzzle. You know, we're all part of that. So everyone involved in your club, from, as I say, the chairperson to the people who make the tea and wash the jerseys, have a very, very important role to play in ensuring your clubs really run effectively. You know, and to understand the role we play and where we fit as part of that puzzle, um, you know, can play a really, really important role in the success of the club. And if people understand where they sit and what their role is doing to ensure that your club's successful, and how they play a role and how it's valued, that's when the puzzle starts coming together, you know. So our executive officers are accountable for overall operational, strategic, and financial management of the organization that is our club. You know, our coaches, they're in a position of leadership and power with their teams and within the club. You know, they're the subject matter experts on the game. You know, they know what they're talking about, you know, in most cases with our coaches, and they have the expertise to work with and to develop our players. Our officers and our club volunteers then manage the non-coaching club operations. So that's everything from, as I said, cutting the grass to washing the jerseys to making sure there's money in the pot at the end of the year. And parents, even the ones that aren't going to be actively involved in your club, are responsible for their children and the players that come into the club, you know. So does everyone in your club know where they fit? Think about that, you know. They all know, does everyone know where they fit in your club? Do your members, officers, coaches, executive understand how they're doing their own role effectively and how that can have a really, really positive impact on other people in the club too? Is everyone in the club clear on what is the structure of your club? You know, are you a one club? Are you a standalone ladies football club? Have you maybe some kind of an agreement with one of the other clubs in your area? Are you not a one club, but you're sort of a one club? How does the committee work? How do you get a job as a coach in your club? Does everyone understand how your club actually works? And what's everyone's role in the structure of that? Across even all codes within your club as well. And then I suppose, what can you do in your club this year to make sure all of the pieces of the puzzle fit together? You know, so just to finish off, guys, you know, we're doing a bit of talking about this subject when we were coming up with the presentation, and we talked about, well, what does a good club look like? You know, and the characteristics of effective clubs is one that understands what your mission is. So understands why you're there, has a mission, and goes after it. You know, so what is your mission statement? Thinking about that, and understands the player development approach rather than the win at all cost approach. You know, they respect the roles of the three different components of the off-field team in your club. So we've got our on-field teams and our players, but we've got coaching, governance, and operations as well. You know, they understand why rules and processes exist and look for ways to streamline them, you know. And they actively work to communicate and collaborate within your off-field team to support players. Okay, so really, really pride communication there. And then they also remind each other that when we get lost in detail and politics and administrative procedure, that the compass always points north, and it always points north. That's always to our players and our members, you know, and they're the things we're always going after, you know. A successful club, and there's no secret formula, I said earlier, but there's three secrets to a successful club, and that lie within the balance and partnership between high quality coaching and high quality coaching support, effective governance and leadership that provides direction, you know, not micromanagement of club teams and programs within your club, and then maybe efficient operations that make the best use of our volunteers to support our players and coaches on the field. And the people who serve in these three roles, they make up your off-field team that support your on-field team, you know. And then finally, guys, you know, sometimes we have to remember as well that the competition belongs with the players in the game, you know, not within the off-field team, you know, between adult egos and maybe power plays within our clubs. And it's important to address that as well. You know, in successful clubs, the members of the off-field team are all respected people with different skills, clear roles, and appropriately integrated responsibilities. You know, that it's not about who's doing more or who can do more or who can be at the pitch 8 days a week rather than 7 days a week, you know. So that's an important one to remember as well. I suppose from myself and Vivian's point of view, that's the end of our presentation tonight. Hopefully you've got something out of tonight, and hopefully you've found it valuable tonight. If you have any questions, stick them in the chat now, or stick them in the Q&A box now. But if not, we'll leave it there. So thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for being involved in that.
Thanks, everyone.